Hello, people. We're doing a podcast. So I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we're doing a podcast.
And we're going to have great audio, which is why I'm going to turn on this blender.
Oh,
just to
no.
make sure things are traditional.
Hey, I can always add the noise back in. It's just good to record it without it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's good to have options for like different ways that we can fuck it up later.
Yeah, I basically used to do that, with the ones outside. I'd compress it to the point that all the background noises and the crickets and shit were super loud. Like, it was actually intentional back then. That's some kind of something.
We're going to blame that on melon perfidiousness.
Right, it's got to be loud as fuck, and if it's not loud as fuck, why would you listen to it?
That's right. A podcast should be like club music.
Yeah, I'm really surprised no one has commented on how damn loud I've gotten some of these podcasts. I've literally gotten them completely brick-walled before, as loud as I possibly could get them.
I don't know what brick walled in is, but I can tell you that the reason is because you're the only person who knows audio in this sphere.
Well,
and just there aren't that many people that I think that know about audio, honestly. As like music production type shit.
Yeah.
I can play a chord and a scale on my guitar, but it's not the same thing.
Honestly, I can't wait to get done with all this stuff and I can get back to making the chord library and doing some more music-y stuff. Maybe actually complete a song for once.
Whoa.
Yeah, I should maybe send you a clip of something. I haven't been able to write any good music, but I've been able to get something to sound really good, like with respaces panned and treated like guitars. So yeah, it's like, never heard anyone do that before, so that's kind of cool. Just have to make them actually do something interesting instead of, or something.
Right, and so rather than just being interesting sounds, you have to have some kind of sequence of things.
Yeah.
Maybe I could write something with you when I come see you. I'm back in a music writing sort of mood because I've started having like riffs up here in my head while I'm out driving and shit. So my head's back in that kind of area. The problem is that if you get out of the habit of writing music down, then it's like anything else, right? You sit down to actually put the idea to paper or in your music program, and you don't know where to start. Like you can't even remember. There's just no fluency anymore. So that's where I'm going to be at. Maybe I can practice a couple times, but
Well, if you can write the melody, then I can, pick out some very interesting chords and put them under it.
Well, I'm actually pretty good at coming up with melodies. There are a couple people I think who can attest to that. But I'm actually better at putting melodies on top of chord progressions that are already there. So if you picked out the chords first, I could get you a melody in like a couple minutes.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I'm just a baller at everything, man.
That would be nice. I can't write... I shouldn't say that because I went back and actually listened to that little thing that I put up on the Fight Failure SoundCloud, that I sent you so long ago. And I listened to it, I was like, this is kind of nice. And then I remembered...
Was it the arpeggios one?
No, maybe it was an arpeggio. Yeah, I guess technically it was because it was the melody was only playing notes from the chords. It was like synth and...
yeah, I think we're thinking of the same one.
Yeah, I liked the way that sounded. I was like, I could make a song like this. Even if it's not by the numbers because the chords are very atypical, but the whole, like, the fact that the melody's only with the chords, so it's a bit unusual, but I probably should finish that. No, but the problem is I want to make, like, an actual song. And I can either...
With, like, words and shit?
Yeah, with, like, words and shit, so... But that's the big issue, obviously. It's like, that's a whole different ballgame. And maybe I should just make some instrumental stuff, because I know I could actually do that, because I've been able to make at least a minute sound really good. So, surely I could make 3 minutes sound really good. But
yeah, the number of things that you have to do to make a a 3-minute song out of a 1 minute thing. There's not that much. It's not that complicated. You just have to change a couple of things, and then because how should I put this? There aren't that many sections in a song, right? You typically have your verse, and then maybe a slight change in the verse, and then some kind of bridge to the chorus, and then a chorus. And the chorus might have 2 sections in it. You might just have one thing repeated.
Right.
But there's really not that many variations in one song, thematically. So if you can get, how do I put this? I could probably get you a couple of workable variations on the chord progressions you're already using, because the thing is, people want to make it all complicated, but actually the simpler music is, the better in general. Like, you want to have a lot of very simple layers. That's what makes good music. It's the layers and it's the simplicity.
Well, I'm definitely on board with that. I mean, there's no sense in noodling, so to speak. Yeah, actually, I did complete a song, but it was like 5 years ago. It was a drum.
Oh yeah, all the way through.
Yeah, it was a drum and bass song called Tamaruk.
That's already, so you're most of the way there. I mean, most people never make it past noodling a few riffs.
Yeah, maybe I should send it to you. I didn't know anything about anything, so it's actually it's not incredibly dissonant, but it's like most of the intervals are minor seconds for the melody kind of thing.
I get you.
And it's basically noodling, like extremely fast. But yeah, I'll send it to you. Really, the problems are, I wish I could get back to the original file and make it sound really good, because there's a lot of production problems, like really the big problem is the snare drum, because there's not enough top end on it. The kick is good, the bass is good, the respace is actually really good. I think the synth leads are good. The hi-hats, there's not enough variation, but most people would never notice that.
Do you make all of your own sounds for the instruments? I remember you sent me a snare drum that one time.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, I can make a good sounding, this is something I can actually brag about. I can make a good sounding snare from anything. In fact, I was banging on my laptop earlier, and I was like, shit, I could make this sound really good. And I could, because there's really simple rules. In fact, I might as well tell them, if anyone listening to this has any kind of whatever, music production, something. Basically, the number one thing is that you want it to be, the transient should be 15 milliseconds, and by that I mean it should be clipped for 15 milliseconds at the beginning. So what you do is you EQ it to be all perfect, and then you do this. So basically you just go into your DAW, and for the first 15 milliseconds you raise it by 6 dB, you use a limiter, you cut it off. And I learned that because, like, I love Deftones' White Pony, and it's not necessarily just because of the music, it's because of the production. It's just amazing production, especially the drums. And so for a lot of the songs, the snares and the kicks are limited for exactly 15 milliseconds, and I think that's the perfect sound. And then all you have to do is just play with the the release time on the tail of it, so to speak. And of course you have to cut out any ringing frequencies, which, I mean, you don't have to be taught how to do that. If you wanted to get really technical, you would go to the fundamental tone of the snare. This is pure autism, but you go to, you look at it in the spectrum, and you'd see, oh wow, the fundamental is 230 hertz or 200 hertz. And so then you'd be like, okay, I want this to sound more powerful. And so then, 230 times 2 is, 460, so that'd be the octave. So you do the fifths and the octaves, and you go into Audacity, you make fucking sine wave tones, you'd bring them back in, and you would do the same thing. You'd cut them down to 15 milliseconds and put them just at that beginning part. I
have a theory about the 15 milliseconds. I bet you that's the amount of time it takes for that first wave to travel, that first wave of vibration on the cymbal or on the drum to travel to the edge and back. So that there's no, or on that first wave traveling to the edge, it's not going to have any kind of interference on it. So when it starts traveling back, the peaks and troughs are going to start interfering with each other, creating complex waveforms. But that first one is very pure. So I bet you that's where that 15 milliseconds comes from.
I have no opinion on this. I can say that it can sound good up to 20. I mean, look, you can make it... There are ways to make it sound good for like 100. But it's not going to be the same sound, Obviously, there's lots of different ways to make a snare drum. So, if you like that big, like a Def Leppard snare sound, like with the
that one I don't know. I don't listen to Def Leppard because I have good taste.
Okay. Well, anyway, they're known for that giant snare, right?
Okay.
So with that, to get it to stop ringing out, you actually bring down the fundamental tone. You basically EQ it in with your EQ and you automate the EQ. So you do it like plus 12 for the fundamental or whatever to get it where it needs to be. And then you automate it to duck. So it goes from enhancing it to cutting it down, and that way it doesn't go doom, doom, it just goes doom. Or, okay, so pendulum, you've heard Hold Your Color.
Mm-hmm.
You know how massive that snare is. That's a Def Leppard snare for drum and bass. Did the exact same thing. Although there is a trick with that. I'm getting really autistic here. The trick with that is that Rob Swire, he put 2 dB of side chaining. So the entire song was side chained to the kick and the snare. So that's basic. So whenever the kick or the snare happened, the rest of the song was actually subtly ducked in volume by 2 dB, just to make them even more gigantic.
Okay. What?
We're getting really.
I think I've asked you
into
this
the weeds
before,
here.
but why is loudness so important on this production side of things? Because you're always talking about did you notice how loud that song was? That kind of shit. It's like I still don't really get it. Is it just a clipping thing or what?
Well, look, I'm not a fan of the loudness wars. Everything I've actually made, I always go back, even if I put it at, make it loud as fuck at some point, I always go back and I'm like, you know what, let's bring it back a bit. And I always prefer when the drums cut through completely, like almost no loudness maximization at all. I just like it. The drums need to breathe. And the
loudness war sounds like the sort of thing that technicians would get into, like the way that guitarists get into shredding as like a competitive technical thing, and then end up making bad music out of it.
Right. Well, okay. So I mean, it's simple. People, if you play them at the same volume, a song that hasn't been, how to describe this? Okay. Have you listened to Death Magnetic by Metallica?
No, I haven't.
Shit. Well, anyway.
Sorry, I'm very parochial when it comes to music. So if it's not by August Burns Red, then I probably haven't heard it.
Well, from what that's pretty loud. That's not completely brick-walled. Like that song you sent me, that was like around -8 RMS. So it's not...
The Wolves Among Ravens one?
Yeah, so that's about...
It's a good song.
That's about where I would like it. That's about as loud as I would ever want anything to be, because any louder than that, and you're going to sacrifice quality for loudness. But it would sound better, it would sound best probably around -14, because then the drums would be above the guitars. And this is the thing, when I mean above the guitars, like the transients, you'd be able to feel the hits, you know what I mean? This is hard to describe.
Can you put it in terms of waveforms? Are we talking like the no, I suppose you can't, because we're talking about more like a... Okay, can we talk in terms of a Fourier transform, or is that not something...
No, I don't know shit about that. But what I'm saying is the peaks, that 15 millisecond thing, or however long the transient is, basically to get it as loud as possible, what you do is you cut all those off. That's what a limiter does, and it brings up the total volume of the song.
Okay.
And so you just don't do that. And if you were to get them to be the same listened volume, you would prefer the one almost all the time that hasn't been limited. But of course, with radio and with people being retarded, like, okay, so you're shuffling songs on your iPod or whatever. I don't have one, but you do that. And so you get a new modern song. Let's say you were listening to an old one, something that wasn't whatever, and let's presume it's quality, like modern quality. So like I don't know, Nevermind by Nirvana before it was crushed to shit,
Okay.
And then, so you have it at the same volume, right? And so then you go to a modern song, and then it almost takes your head off. Well, there's, just some kind of psychological thing that things sound better when they're louder. There's more energy, there's more whatever. So that's why.
Right, you get a greater intensity of that emotion than you did before. And there's a sort of diminishing returns aspect to that, too, where, you're trying to get that same intensity as you got before from the song, so you turn it up, and then you turn it up. And eventually, you're just doing it because that's all there's left. You might as well not be listening to it if you're listening to it quieter.
Yeah, and the problem, now that you say that, is once everything's brick-walled, obviously you can't bring anything up. So, like, whereas in the past a song might get louder throughout, it's hard now to find songs that get louder in the last chorus in any major way. Usually they'll resort to putting something in a higher register because it's perceived as louder, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, the psychological tricks take over. Yeah.
So this is why all those old-timey songs sound so chill, I suppose. They sound very unexciting, but they have a lot more soul to them. But it's like you're listening in sepia tone, kind of. It comes through very... Not tinny, because that's an artifact of the radio. But if you have one on on vinyl, it just comes through very... It's like the way that movies from back in the days feel very slow. Like there's just not a lot of action per second like we expect there to be today. There's not a whole lot of attention to detail per second because they didn't... the stuff they paid attention to was the important artistic details, far more than like the volume of each person's gasp at each reaction take in a Fast and Furious movie or something.
Yeah, well, this is a very complicated thing. First of all, you can only get something so loud on vinyl. You're limited. You literally can't get it super, super loud. The second thing is that the bass has to be reined in, and it has to be in mono pretty much always. It can't really move very much side to side in the speaker range. And you
that's the bass only, right? You could get the side to side on the guitars up in the upper ranges.
Yeah. But it'll throw the needle if it's too. So there's that. There's kind of a focusing effect on the bass even more than already, which bass should always be basically in mono anyway. Although Andy Wallace always puts a chorus on his bass. He's a famous mixer, but whatever to that. It's the SPX 90 Symphonic preset. It's preset 15. There you go. Massive tip. I don't have one, but...
Massive autism.
But there you go. If you want to... That's actually... that's the same preset at the beginning of Come As You Are by Nirvana. The do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That sound, that interesting chorus effect, that's actually preset 15 on the SPX 90. So, there you go.
We should probably throw a couple links in the description of this thing, because even if we aren't doing an Ataraxia radio,
this is basically one at this point. We'll just look. So from now on, I think I'll just link all the blogs, not blogs. What is this? A podcast.
Podcasts to the songs and songs.
Yeah.
And...
I'll just put it on True Ataraxia, and you can get a free post, and I can get a free post. Everyone gets a free post.
Oh, what you could do is put the song posts in the blog posts below. So just throw the YouTube in there. Be like, hey, now pause and listen to the Nazca theme down there.
I wish that was on YouTube. That's actually not. You can't.
What?
You see, that's why I had to link.
YouTube confirmed for Satanism.
I know. That's why.
That's not okay.
That's why I had to link to the Joe Hisashi concert, because Kaze no Tani no Nasaka, in its full glory, is not to be found on YouTube. So, and that is the best song ever made. I meant that. For the record, since you've seen the movie, that's the song that plays right after Lord Yupa runs off into the wastes after finding the destroyed village, and it shows Nazca flying in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
That song, best song ever made, because it expresses the immense beauty and the immense tragedy and sadness of life, and I mean that.
Yeah. Still, the Beatles were probably better.
Boomer. Beatles. You want to talk about old
they
shit
changed
not
the
being
world,
good.
man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they funded that damn... fucking George Harrison and Lennon, John Lennon, they're the ones who funded that damn Holy Mountain movie. Satanic shit.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I should have mentioned
Holy
that.
shit. I didn't realize they were in that deep. I just figured they were patsies, but
No.
that indicates that they were... We should bring in people on what we're talking here.
Yeah.
Real quick. So, the Holy Mountain, which I haven't seen.
I haven't seen it either.
It's a satanic, probably Kabbalah-oriented movie by the most spider-melon-looking dude you'll ever see in your life, whose name escapes me. I'm trying to bring up the Discord right now so I can grab it out of the chat.
Jodorowsky,
Okay.
acclaimed director.
I'll bring up a description of it, too.
I should tell you that since I'm recording from the laptop speaker and I have the laptop facing away from me, I can't actually look anything up as long as I'm trying to get good audio quality.
All right. So just the beginning of this thing. A man later identified as the thief, representing the Fool tarot card, lies naked in the desert with flies covering his face like excrement. He is befriended by a footless, handless dwarf, representing the Five of Swords, and then the pair travel into the city where they make money entertaining tourists. Because the thief resembles Jesus Christ in appearance, some locals cast an impression of his body and sell the resulting crucifixes. After a dispute with a priest, the thief eats off the face of his wax statue and sends it skyward with balloons, symbolically eating the body of Christ and offering, quote, himself up to heaven. Soon after, he notices a crowd gathered around a tall tower where a large hook with a bag of gold has been sent down in exchange for food. The thief, wishing to find the source of the gold, ascends the tower. There he finds the alchemist and his silent female assistant. And it just goes on in that vein. Like, if you read the plot of this thing, it's just hot garbage. And I don't mean, like... how do I put it? Like, this is the sort of thing that makes drinking the blood of your heroes, like we talked about last time, like tame. Because we were, first of all, like the idea drink the blood of your heroes, which we were joking about. Even the idea that you should not do. But we were joking and being like very, very primitive about it. This is very developed type of stuff. Like they're telling a story specifically to corrupt you through it's like a symbols of transformation type of thing.
Yeah, and the imagery is just what the fuck.
Yeah, so
like crucified bats on crosses, and of course the Holy Mountain itself. I might have to watch it at some point because it's just so evil sounding. Somebody has to do it, but honestly, I really might not. Technolize is kind of a hump enough. Although there's nothing evil about Technolize, it's just literally the most black-pilled thing ever.
Did you say you started watching it already?
No, but
first couple?
The intro to this podcast will be the last couple seconds of the Technolize theme. So you'll notice that. That's where that little sound came from.
Okay, I want to throw something in here for me because Heaviside triggered me the other day by saying nobody ever practiced Zodiacism. It's a hypothetical, made-up religion. Well, from later on in the plot of this thing, the characters are led by the alchemist through various transformation rituals. Each carries a staff topped with the symbol of his or her planet. The alchemist carries a sun staff. The thief carries a moon staff. And this alchemist assistant carries a mercury staff. So they're doing the astrology thing.
Maybe,
so I guess what I'm getting at here is that my discernment, which you don't believe in, is way better than mere facts and actual things that have happened.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could look into Kabbalah. Maybe Zodiacism is just an aspect of Kabbalah. That's what my guess would be.
I'd imagine it. I would imagine it's included. First of all, because astrology gets pushed a lot these days. Now, granted, so does basically any sort of paganism, which is opposed to Christianity, on account of the Kabbalists just wanting to, tear out the roots of that thing. But I think the reason I'm convinced of it is because of the Jungian symbolism of the thing. It just feels like a very deep instinct, like these analogies we draw between things like becoming a star. Like you go to Hollywood, you become a star. These things feel deeper than cultural. What do you call it? Cultural training. Culturation. I don't have the exact word I want here, but
yeah,
it feels like people in different places would come up with that idea independently because it's already in there.
Well, at the very least, it's something that has certainly existed for thousands of years. So even if it is cultural, it's so deep that it might as well be inbuilt,
Yeah, but also in my defense, clearly people cared enough about astrology to have discovered that precession of the shit. What's it called? What happens when you're stupid? You try to make a case for something. Can't even spell. Precession of the poles. So it's the thing that is changing the North Star from Polaris to Sirius. Is precession. It takes 26,000 years or something like. And anyway, they knew about it back before what Christians would think of as the flood. What was possibly the same thing as the Younger Dryas. Like people knew astrology well enough to have observed that. And as Charles Murray pointed out, like that means that there was a civilization back then that was keeping accurate records long enough to have discovered that, which means something on the order of about 1,000 years in a row, which indicates at least a semi-advanced civilization or like institutional knowledge being passed down, and they cared about the stars that much, which strikes me as a religious sort of devotion. And aside from that, I'm not the only one to notice that the Hindu caste system thing feels like an older religion. It feels like the remains of an older religion. Something that became degraded into this just sort of mindless repetition of old rituals and like old categories of things, which just completely degrades that society. Indian society in particular is pretty fucked.
Isn't that where it all started? Was India? Like the first civilization ever. I mean, that's like, I guess, normie theory, so we could go back and, like, first civilization was 10 billion years ago or something, but...
Are you talking first as in pre-Sumeria?
Yeah. I think I read that somewhere. It was literally the first. I know people say, Göbekli Tepe and that, but I know Tex wrote something about there being a site in India, super old, and he said ancient nukes because there were areas of where sand had been turned to glass in massive amounts, which is quite unusual. I can't remember that post.
It's tough to speculate on account of, we know with reasonable certainty that the monuments in Egypt, a couple of them, are older than the Egyptian civilization we know. So,
Yeah.
I'm more of the opinion that there was global civilization back a ways that had, like big cities in different parts on the earth that could all make a claim to go back a long ways.
Well, there's the pyramids off the coast of Japan.
The underwater ones?
That'd be worth a woo post, maybe.
I don't know that much about it.
I don't either. I just know they exist.
Did they ever find anything next to Benin City? That's one of my outstanding predictions, and
I don't know. I don't
never
know what
looked these
that
things
is.
up.
I don't know.
I figure, seeing as that they cared about astrology back in the day, that they would care. I suppose it depends on definitions to an extent, because where the equator and the Grand Meridian meet, that's the Grand Meridian is a modern convention, and I don't think it's. I guess I don't know this, but I don't think it's based on anything astrological wise.
No,
but
I don't think so.
It's also coming out of a lot of astrological types of people, because they picked that location based on its distance from the Temple Mount.
Right.
That's David Flynn observation, is that they made sure there was exactly like such and such nautical miles from the Temple Mount that they put that founding stone for. I think it's sitting under the Bank of London now.
Well, I would love to know if they ever built anything in accordance to the magnetic North Pole instead of just astrological, because that would actually point to some kind of real advancement, you know.
You're talking just the ability to measure magnetic north, and doesn't that thing change?
That's a good point. That does change, doesn't it?
Yeah, I keep hearing that's supposed to be changing right now. Shoot, where did I hear that was becoming a problem for GPS? Was it GPS programmers? No, it's for navigation at sea, I think. I don't know.
I don't know.
What happens when you talk about things you don't know about?
Yeah, I don't know much about any of this.
We were getting at something before that, though, that felt interesting and important.
Well, we were talking about the Holy Mountain. You mentioned Zodiacism. I mentioned Kabbalah. You trigger it yet?
I want to go back just before the Holy Mountain. Well, do we want to go back into the music autism?
Well,
I feel like it's going to be a very special sort of person who enjoys that without knowing what you're talking about.
Yeah, probably best not to, because once I get going, it's kind of hard to stop.
All right, so we could go back to talking about the greatest piece of art of all time, greater even than the Nazca music, and that would be Inuyasha.
Oh, come on.
I've been thinking about writing some fan fictions about Inuyasha, My Little Pony crossovers.
I'm writing a Blockheads fan fiction comic, and it's got My Little Pony in it. So
yes, I remember your premise.
I really should send you one panel, but I should complete it, because I know if I get feedback on it and I get the good feels without completing it, then it's actually an anti stimulant. It's like, okay, you get it already, I don't have to finish it.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I refer to that poetically as blowing your load too early.
Yes, that is how Shakespeare wrote about it.
Keats. It was Keats.
Oh, okay.
Do you care if I jump way off on a different thing and read off that quote I was talking about before from Robert Greene?
Yeah, we can talk about a bunch of stuff, and since you have the computer screen, then we can talk about what we talked about talking about before we were talking.
The This Week in News shit.
Yeah, so you're going to have to go through all that, but let's do...
No, let's do that first, because my thing would be too much of a tangent. Too much, even.
Oh, okay.
So let's not go back as far as the Trump con. The Moloch and Wall Street one is interesting, but I think it's too easily summarized.
Yeah, it's self-explanatory.
Do you want to do rich and miserable in America?
It's a bit self-explanatory. I think we can just kind of talk about it, though. It's good to know for people who don't know that, yeah, the rich people are actually fucking miserable. So.
Oh, but yes, this is the trouble is that they're not just miserable; they're blinded by their dopamine seeking. So
Yeah.
they like have underlying anxieties that they keep trying to cover over, and they first of all they can't, but they're also like immune to negative feedback, which would actually allow them to solve any problems. So
Right.
they just
And like I said in the post, a giant problem of not being able to get out of it is because all of their peers are status whores, materialists just like them, and of course many of them are married to status or materialists. And so there's a quote in there of a guy saying wanting to quit his $1.2 million a year job and work at a startup that paid $600,000 a year, and his wife laughed at him. So that's a quote in there. So, that's why a lot of these people who get it on some level can't change.
Patrick and I were talking earlier about why the elites are defecting these days, and why they're going into this like Nietzschean monologue type of shit inside their heads, where they're saying like, we are the wolves, and the people out there who are like cattle, they deserve to die. And he pointed out that it probably has a lot to do with them actually feeling like sheep on the inside, because they're like trapped in these systems that their ancestors built and they inherited.
Oh yeah, and if you want to do something good, like is also mentioned in the article, like it's computer screens, it's all abstraction. So if you want to help people, it's just numbers on a fucking chart. And if you want to hurt people, it's just numbers on a fucking chart. Scale and the fucking digital domain are both accelerants.
Which, on the one hand, makes a person feel very empowered. There's a sort of magic to it. On the other hand, it gives you an enormous sense of ennui, and also like an insecurity, because there's a part of you that knows like that's not you that's making that happen. That's the abstractions. That's all the other people. That there's just this giant system of things that you don't really understand, because you were born into it. You didn't build the whole thing, and there's no way one person could understand all of that shit. So you put all these things together, and you have a bad recipe for somebody who wants to go back to that childhood thing that we were talking about earlier. Actually, that's the topic we should talk about. Is these rich people wanting to go back to their personal vision of Eden, their heaven? Because this is a very strong motivator in the human. I think it's a semi-conscious thing, because you get these like fantasies of like quitting this or that, and you want to like run off in the desert and do peyote or something.
So it's like the Citizen Kane thing.
Yeah. Actually, Citizen Kane is probably the best expression of all this stuff that we're talking about, because you can see in him that desire to go back to his youth, where things were simple and he didn't have all these responsibilities. He understood what was going on, and he had the things that he actually wanted. Now, maybe he wouldn't actually get those things back if he went back to it. So, because maybe the necessary conditions wouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah.
But, like, what? Because he's chasing the dopamine, he's got that anxiety at the same time, he can't solve his problems. And the easiest thing to do in that sort of situation, and the reason he self-sabotages, is to quit everything and leave and escape. Because then at least you don't have all of those things pressing in and weighing on you and overwhelming you, because it's that overwhelming aspect of it more than anything. It's like all the negative and positive stimulus at the same time. It's like you can't make sense of it. Yeah. So he just wants to get away. That's why people go on vacations, and they look forward to them so much, instead of actually fixing their lives.
Yep. It's it really should be mentioned more because people talk about the death drive, but I think before the death drive, people who had a good childhood, me included, I had an ideal childhood,
Yeah, me too.
and you realize like, hey, you can actually be completely happy and carefree. People who have had really fucked up childhoods, obviously, you notice they're more. I mean, for many reasons, but I think one of them is that they actually go to death drive because they don't realize they've never had that, like, hey, you can actually be completely carefree and actually happy. And so that's why, basically, that's the idea. I already said it.
Okay. So I think what's going on, if we're talking about having empathy for the devil here, the devil being the elites in this case, I think the reason that they're checking out of society is because they're experiencing, aside from what I was talking about before with the citizen above suspicion, the bit about the social pressures to continue with the system as it exists, which is a real thing. But I think toward the end of it, they more check out because they feel trapped, and they're projecting that onto the people they perceive as being sheep. So that's why they do the thing where they idealize the wolf and the psychopathy. There's the reason I think this is because if you ever meet a real psychopath, they will not go out of their way to corrupt innocents, for example. Like they don't get the same thrill out of that as a person who's actually really ideological, but pretending to be a pragmatist, pretending to be a nihilist. A person who is by predisposition an idealistic person, but who wants to become psychopathic. That's the sort of person who's going to get off on corruption, because for them it represents that sense of throwing off responsibilities. There's the release of tension thing going on there. The psychopath doesn't have that tension. He just has the appetites. So I think you see a lot of that desire to corrupt innocence in the elite today because they have this idealized Nietzschean. Nietzsche wouldn't be before this kind of thing, but they have this like survival of the fittest thing going on where they're trying to defect as a conscious choice because they feel stuck, and they're projecting their own sheepness onto all the people out there who are, if we're being straightforward, under their care, right? Like in a society where you have leaders and you have people who are basically sheep. I mean, that's why Jesus calls us sheep. Then you have the people who are supposed to be caring for them becoming wolves is an abnegation of that duty, which everybody understands that they have. There's like an instinctive understanding of that obligation, which they want to throw off because they don't understand it and they feel trapped. They don't feel powerful, but at the same time they feel insecure at the same time as they feel powerful. It's a very bad combination of factors to produce this strong tendency toward defection. So there you go. I've been trying lately to feel empathy for these people in order to give them an out, because if there's one thing that we've learned from Sun Tzu, if nothing else, is you never, even if you intend to destroy somebody, you never back them into a corner. But aside from that, I think it's generally better to avoid conflicts that can be avoided, and part of that means like explaining to people what the situation is. Just good communication. So I think that actually articulating the sorts of differences they have and that we have with them, and understanding their problems is a good thing in any case. Like no matter how the future looks, it's better to have that than not. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, hopefully, as things get worse, there'll actually be some people of quality, or maybe even just people who have giant egos that want to fucking do something. Um, if anyone actually was able to do something, I mean, they'd be so loved. So, you hear that, rich person, super. You hear that, Bayolet prodigy, listening to this. You can,
And obviously Trump would be listening to this podcast, so
yeah,
that goes out to him specifically.
that's right. Go against
Trump Jr. Trump Jr. listens to this podcast.
That's right.
We have good information.
Junior. Go against everything, your entire social circle, your entire life, everyone you know, the entire way you were raised. Go against it all to help people who will spit on your grave when the Zionists tell them to. So, yes, do that, Junior. That's the problem. I mean,
So on that note, we're going to war in Venezuela.
oh, yes. Is that official? Has anything changed since 3 o'clock this afternoon?
I have been paying so little attention to this that you would be envious.
Could you pull up Drudge real quick?
All right.
But yeah, so on the 22nd, Russia put out a thing saying this convoy that was going into Venezuela on the 23rd has U.S. Special Forces in it, and it's going to be used to instigate military action by the United States into Venezuela. And like I said in the post, I don't know exactly why. It could simply be a money grab, like, hey, let's go fire some missiles and then the politicians get to skim some money off the top kind of thing. Could be that. Could be Genie Energy, which of course Rupert Murdoch, the Rothschilds, and our own Jared Kushner are all board members of this energy company. It's expressed interest in the oil fields in Venezuela, as well as the Golan Heights in Syria. It actually has the rights to, under Israel. Israel says it owns the Golan Heights, even though of course it doesn't. And it's given the rights to the oil in the Golan Heights to Genie Energy, just so people know. But yeah, so we'll see. They've obviously really wanted this. Pence has given multiple speeches. Trump's talked about it for over a year now.
Pence talking about Venezuela or the Golan Heights?
Venezuela. I'm talking about Venezuela now.
Okay.
So they obviously really want it. Again, not exactly sure why. We can figure that out if it happens. But I think they'll probably go for this instead of Iran because he still thinks he can get reelected.
Well, as you pointed out, 30-point boost would get him elected. Reelected.
Right. If he starts the right kind of war, he will get reelected. That's the unfortunate truth.
And I don't think Iran would be the right kind of war. So I think this, if we're talking calculation, psychopathic calculation, Venezuela would be a good bet.
Right, and it's not like we wouldn't kick their ass. I'm totally against this, by the way.
I actually don't think that we would kick their ass.
You don't? Okay.
No, I think that it would be a close thing, and that would be just as bad because we're becoming very incompetent, right? Like I don't think people understand how bad we are at very very basic shit from what we would consider a walk in the park 10 years ago. I mean the decay of shit in the military and in industry is unbelievable to people who are not involved with them. Like the shit with boats running into each other in the middle of the ocean because the women on board are not talking to each other. That is not the exception. Now, granted, there are still high-functioning parts in the military and in business and stuff, but I think it's easy to think that our military is in the same state of readiness as it was 5 years ago, and it's not. And then just aside from that, there's the absolute demoralization of the effective parts of it. Granted, there are still plenty of people who are not so demoralized that they wouldn't be effective, but you start stacking up against real military problems, and it becomes, how do I put this? It becomes something like building a bridge, and we can't build a bridge anymore.
Okay. I don't.
We do not have the high trust artisans put together with the brainy talent to actually put up a bridge anymore.
I don't disagree. It depends entirely on what the goal of the thing is. If the goal is to waste a bunch of money for the defense contractors, then it's just going to be fucking Tomahawk missiles flying everywhere.
I think we are probably still good at firing missiles. The question then becomes,
yes, we are still good at pressing buttons.
Does Venezuela magically get a missile defense system?
No, that doesn't just happen overnight. They don't have Russia to ship them S-400s.
Yeah, and Russia probably is not looking to take a fall on that either.
No, they're not going to back up Venezuela. Fuck no.
The headline on Drudge is Venezuela aid trucks met with tear gas, gunfire on borders.
Well, there you go. It's heating up. It's not huge yet. So I guess it's just going to be one of those things to keep an eye on. But, it's close enough that I guess Russia was pretty accurate because they said today it's going to turn into a clusterfuck. Kind of turn into a clusterfuck.
Yeah, that sounds like a clusterfuck. I'll have a quick look, but I don't have any of the context.
Well, it's just something to keep. That's about it. It's just.
I'm getting distracted by this Ashley Madison ad too. This sounds like a great dating site.
That's still a thing, even after everyone's profile was leaked, like 2 years ago.
It is if you're the sort of person who reads Drudge.
Huh. Drudge.
Or maybe.
Drudge is a shit Zionist, but, it's just a quick way to look at an aggregate of a good amount of news.
Or how do I put this? I don't go on Drudge, but I also don't usually get Ashley Madison ads. I want to talk about another one on here that's interesting. Have you seen this Amazon Fire TV cube, the black cube?
Oh no.
Yeah, they're even trying anymore.
No comment. Fucking Amazon.
So, all right, that's Venezuela.
Yeah. So next post. Oh, I'm trying to start a war with anonymous conservative. So.
Yeah, I saw that one. Blindingly retarded was your words.
Yes, an anonymous conservative is blindingly retarded. And I was taking him down a notch for his ridiculous Q-spiracy crap in regards to Ann Coulter, who was one of the first supporters of Trump, who's been very consistent on immigration for 15 or so years now.
Yeah, I saw this. He's saying Coulter is a shill. She's in it for the money. Somebody sent her a wire transfer, and now she hates Mitt Romney. How do you explain that?
Yeah, it's like, gee, this guy's so fucking stupid. I'd like to take down RK. Obviously, there's some things I believe about RK, but it's a complicated thing, right? Like, has anyone really gone through every little implication and every thing that's been said about it and actually really thought about it? No. And it's definitely not true that all liberals are selected. I mean, come on. It's just not true.
I'm sticking with my interpretation of it.
What is that?
It's 2/3 social class and 1/3 political leanings. So you have the upper class people having the marriage, the retaining the high marriage rates and the low average offspring. Where they invest more in each of them. and then people in so that would be your Belmont Fishtown division from Coming Apart by Charles Murray, and then 1/3 actually is the politics, because I do think there's a component of it. It's just not as strong as the class component.
Okay.
And I agree. I don't think anybody smart has gone through all the implications of it, unless E.O. Wilson did that back in the day already, and I just haven't read any of his books.
Probably not, because he's a smart guy, but I don't think he believes in the selfish gene. I read The Social Conquest of Earth a long time ago.
Yeah?
So...
He didn't believe in the selfish gene thing?
He definitely has blind spots. And he's old as fuck now. There was something I was missing. Oh. The biggest complaint with RK selection theory is that it is what has caused Vox Day and some certain other people, maybe people in this sphere, to start down a path to becoming raving lunatics.
That is a problem with it.
And any kind of thing that does that is obviously at least not explained quite well. And again, it's from Anonymous Conservative, and the guy's a retard. So that should at least be taken into account.
I don't get on him too much for being not very smart. I don't think he's terribly smart, but I'd put him in, the functional range. So he'd be a midwit, right?
Yeah.
And he's also a very conscientious one. He did a very good job with his blog. I always use his blog as the template for what you want to do if you want to get your idea out there. He did a brilliant job with the blog. I think his support for war in Iran is the sort of thing that betrays like how naive he is, I suppose.
Is he a boomer?
Might be the best way of saying it.
Is he a boomer?
He strikes me as a Gen X, to be honest.
How could anyone but a boomer support war in fucking Iran?
Just watching Fox News. I mean, if you...
Jesus.
Yeah, you got to understand most people are not terribly sophisticated. So part of that is if you get your news from Fox News, Q, and Drudge, then you're going to support war in Iran.
That's a good point. Q.
Why? Well, because they're a threat to our greatest ally in the region. It's geopolitics, man. We gotta protect our interests. We gotta protect our allies. We can't have these terrorists, these evil people. I mean, have you heard about the horrible human rights violations? There are children crying in the streets of Iran right now.
Oh yeah.
And what are we doing? We're supposed to be a light unto the world. A city on a hill, if you will.
Each one of us a shining light of 1,000 stars.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Wow, I felt weird when I said that. Gotta have fucking...
You just called down the worst sort of attention on yourself. You recited a spell, and now you're possessed.
I kind of did, actually. No, I don't like that. Good.
You're possessed by a meat parasite.
Oh, yeah. I want to make a song like Garlic and the Wormies. I don't know. I love garlic, though. But I want to keep my worms. No, but...
That's going to sound kind of weird out of context.
It will, but whatever. What was the point? Oh, yeah, that was my favorite comment when I wrote that Why Trump Isn't Trustworthy thing 7 months ago. Called it, guys. I'm so smart. But my favorite comment was the last one on the post, and it was from like some commenter called Info. It probably was Anonymous Conservative. But it was like, look into Q. Trump may be our guy. And I'm just like, thanks a lot, buddy. Never heard about Q before.
Ah, shit. Look into That's something my dad would say.
Bless his heart. Y'all.
Hey, my dad's not all bad. He doesn't like the Beatles. He likes some AC/DC, but he can be forgiven for that. He likes the old AC/DC. He hates the new stuff. Anything with that new singer, like Thunderstruck, he doesn't like that. I actually like Thunderstruck.
And now I don't know what you're talking about with music.
Oh. It doesn't matter. The thing about my dad is he likes 10 songs. So what he does is he'll turn on the radio, and then he'll go through all the stations to see if one of them is on. And then he'll turn it off in disgust. It's a great ritual. I make fun of him for it every time.
Does he know about like CD players? He could put them all 10 on one CD.
Mm-hmm. He still manages to be a boomer about it. Like, he'll have like these songs, and he'll put them on his phone, and then he'll put them into Bluetooth earbuds, which he wears on his head in the car. Well, actually, what he does when he's in the car is he'll turn on a YouTube, watch some shit about Q or something, because he's always trying to stay informed.
Yes, you got to get your programming in.
So he'll learn third-hand accounts of Q because he's not much of a reader.
Right, so you have Q, and then you have one guy's interpretation of Q, and then a video about this guy's interpretation of Q.
Right, it's a video about Neon Revolt.
Oh, yeah. So, pretty much.
Think about the vastness of space.
Thankfully, Q's dead, pretty much. Anonymous Conservative seems to be the only person that I know of. Of course, I don't know that much. Who's just like fervently into Q.
Vox appears to be keeping his options open.
Well, he has the Q comic, and like I pointed out before, he needs the money.
Yeah, he can't exactly drop the Q comic because I don't think it's about the money.
Well, there's also Face.
Right.
And I think that is probably more important to Vox.
And I have a good bet riding on that, so he can't drop it for that either.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got a bet going with Sir Hamster.
Oh, yeah. Is it the Jordan Peterson's going to show up as a pedophile?
Yep.
Yeah. I'd like to see that. That might be funny.
I see his commenters like asking for it in the comments, and I'm just going, yes, yes.
No, I want him to do it, and I want him to be so blatant he gets sued for it, and then he just like melts down.
Yeah, that's the bad part.
That would be the best. That would be the best shit fest. Oh, please. I'm not super self-destructive, but I do love a good shit fest. As many people have found out.
Yes, I just need you to channel that.
Well, it is. It's being channeled into 5 blog posts a day for at least a couple.
Oh yeah,
months.
that is a lot of channeling. Now that you mention it, but no, I always wanted you to get on Twitter and like harass people. You know, like back in the good old days.
Well, I used to do that. In fact, story time when you guys come, but not story time on blog because multiple felonies.
Right. Yes, we'll have to turn off our phones and take the batteries out when we.
Yeah, actually, seriously, I'm going to make you guys leave your phones inside.
Oh, it's not that. It's not terribly bad. That'll be for the other discussions.
And then we'll be around a giant fire, and I'll bring out my life-sized Hitler mannequin, and we'll all make love to it. And yes, and then you'll give me the blood that you brought as payment for the generous hosting. And a small amount of the blood will be placed into a bronze cup and thrown into the fire, and we will all scream at the top of our lungs.
That's when we summon the Storm King.
Yes.
All right. It's getting late on my end, so we need to start wrapping up. Is anybody going to get through that music autism in the first part? I wonder.
Somebody will.
We'll have to tease that there's because there's a lot of good stuff after.
Did I miss anything? I can't look at the screen. Is there any other posts that I could wrap up in like 30 seconds?
There's old blogosphere. There's your rant about dopamine demons. There's Moloch and Wall Street, which I mentioned. The end of Trump. That was a while back, though. That was you reminding me, hey, it's time to get this thing done that you said you were going to do.
Oh, wait. I remember. There's the, I'll just plug
Space
the video.
Thing? Sheldon Adelson, Morse Khan, Space IL, all that shit?
Well, yeah, Israel's launching a space probe. It's funded by Sheldon Adelson, who's the same guy who funded Trump, blah, blah, blah. It's not too interesting, but it is interesting because Israel's becoming the high-tech center of the world.
Hey, I just now saw this one about the video about Trump and their plan.
Yes, that's the one. I was going to just plug the video. Just please watch the video. And Aioli, you please watch the video. It's so good.
Such
a good primer.
The Tree of Life Award.
Yes. It's not actually very much about Trump. It's about much more important things, for the most part.
Okay. So, this would be a good one to include under the songs, under the blog post. Or do you want me to plug that on the blog? Maybe I'll just watch it and I'll probably have something to say.
Yeah, I think you should. You'll probably be like, huh. Because that's how I was. Just like, I can't even summarize it. There's just so much in there. I mean, you know, Freemasonry is just a part of it. It's completely Jewish. I mean, there's so many things that I didn't know about that were made very clear to me in that video.
Okay. Yes, Freemasonry is Jewish. Like,
honestly, I didn't.
I assume
know
it doesn't need to be said, but it's like Jewish LARPing for white Christians.
I actually didn't know that because I didn't know shit about Freemasonry.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all you do need to know is that it's this. Freemasonry is Kabbalah, and it's for white people who want to pretend that they're Israelites, so that they can be included in like the genetic lineage of the thing. And what that means is that they're always sucking up to actual Jews or people that claim that they're actual Jews, as you like, and so that they're always looking to be granted legitimacy by those people, because that comes from because there's an amount of insecurity there.
Okay.
So how do I put this? If you want to pretend that your lineage is Jewish, then who do you go to? You go to a Jewish person and you say, here's my lineage. Can you see if there's any Jews in it? And they'll be like, all right, how much are you donating? That's basically what Freemasonry comes down to.
I'm one of those English Jews from the 12 tribes.
Yeah, exactly. The British Israel shit.
Yeah, so now is a good time to mention that picture I sent you of Roger Stone with his Zohar Kabbalah Bible that he
takes with him everywhere.
For good luck. So,
wait, does that mean that the engagement is off? Like,
okay,
what does this mean for your love?
I have to hold character, so I can't say anything bad. Although someone might actually be a literal cuck and hold a Kabbalah Bible everywhere he goes and is actually maybe not such a good person.
You know, he could just be a psychopath who knows that this is what you do.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a joke, people, but I will hold to character. So, I love him so much.
I don't feel like your heart's in it.
Oh, but, you know, the more he breaks my heart, the more I love him.
He's such a bad boy.
Oh, he is. Oh, Roger.
All right, that's a beautiful place to end the podcast.
Right.
I feel like we touched everyone's hearts.
Yes, and I wish Roger would touch me. Okay, that's good enough. We'll see you later, people. It's the weekly podcast. Da 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 da.